program that we do every Monday at noon Pacific time. All of these recordings, slides, exercises, and soon the audio tracks to all of these messages are stored in the members area of the Paul Hoyt tribe. And all these recordings, and the recordings only, are going to be available on the YouTube channel at www.youtube.com/user/Paul Hoyt. So this is Office Hours session number 62. And in just a few hours, this will be joining the other 61 presentations available on the YouTube channel. The reasons I do these Office Hours presentations is because I know that being a successful business owner can be a great experience, but I also know that it's tough. You need the education, the training, the tools, and the teamwork in order to be successful. And I want you to get to know me, because when you get to know me, you'll realize that I really do care about you. I really want you to succeed in every area of your life, whatever that success means to you. I want you to find the greatness, the happiness, the divinity within yourself, and then remember it, embrace it, and live it every single day as I try to do. My passion is to increase the survival rate, accelerate the growth rate, and reduce the struggle rate of businesses in America. I really can't help myself. I fall in love with practically every small business owner that I've ever met. I so admire their courage and their determination to take a risk and to jump out and give it their shot at starting and growing their business when it's so tough to do. So I just want to help as many of them as I possibly can. And my vision is to help millions of CEOs and entrepreneurs accelerate their business growth and experience greater harmony and balance in their lives, to help them grow and thrive and blast past survive, as my friend Stephanie tells us. And you can help them and help me by passing the word along. If you find one of these Office Hours presentations that's most helpful to you or you think might be helpful to somebody else, you'll tell them to go to YouTube and check into my channel and watch one of the presentations. There's a tremendous amount of free information available out there to help small businesses owners survive and thrive. Our Office Hours agenda is an in-depth discussion of a business success principle, followed by some closing remarks, special offers, and an invitation for next week's session. And we go into open questions and answers and coaching. First of all, questions and answers on the subject of today. So when you listen to this, especially if you're not able to ask the question online, be sure to note your questions and type them into the window if possible. You can also connect with us in a lot of different ways, and we'll answer your questions later on if we can possibly do that, because I do want to provide free coaching as well. I invite you to join us in the Brilliant Business Groups on both Facebook and LinkedIn. On Facebook, it's facebook.com/groups/Brilliant Business, and we have a special URL that we created for LinkedIn. It's http://bit.ly. That's bit.ly/Brilliant Business Group, because the LinkedIn URL reference for the Brilliant Business Group is very long and almost impossible for anybody to type in. I invite you also to join us in those groups, in the Brilliant Business Groups, because we post the business success principle of the day every day on both Facebook and LinkedIn. I do an energy of the day posting on Facebook. We've done over 400 of them in a row now. Every morning when I get up, I figure out what the energy of the day is, and I try to post a little inspirational message on Facebook and share it in the Brilliant Business Group. You can also, in the Brilliant Business Group, make your comments, ask questions, share insights and takeaways, and you can like my business page, which will help you see these a little more often. Today's topic is on turning it around, doing a quick 180. And I realize that some of you who may be tuning into the call, or some of you that are listening to this recording, that this is a fairly sensitive topic. Whenever you're thinking about turning around your business, it's usually because you're struggling in some way. And typically that's a financial struggle, and which can also be an emotional struggle. So I'm going to be a little bit more subdued today than I usually am when it comes to turning it around, because I know that this can be a pretty sensitive topic for you. As always, I try to relate the subject matter of the day to one or more of the key performance areas of business. And turning it around is primarily something for the leadership of the business and the financial staff of the business, working hand in hand in order to figure out where we can make money and how we cut costs and a lot of the other things that I'll talk about today. But it's primarily those two areas of the company working hand in hand that will turn a business around. Today we're going to talk about when do you need to turn it around. We'll talk about the causes of collapse that many businesses have seen, what to do about it. This is where we're going to talk about the tactics and the strategies that you can employ to turn your business around if you find yourself in turnaround mode. And then we're going to sum it all up with the bottom line. We've been crystallizing a lot of the messages that we've given over the last several years with regards to business. And one of the things that we are focusing on are 5 primary business environments. There's the startup environment, the comfortable growth environment, rapid expansion, which is not comfortable at all, turnaround mode, and exit. And when we defined these, I realized that much of the office hours work that I've been doing, much of the presentations have been focused on these first 3, on starting it up, on having comfortable growth and rapid expansion, but I haven't done anything yet on turnaround mode, and that's why we did this today. And I may very shortly do one on preparing for exit as well from your business. First, let's talk about when are you in a turnaround. I define being in turnaround mode as when you have been profitable and financially stable for some period of time, but now you find yourself in the uncomfortable position of having negative cash flow and negative profitability 3 months in a row. And I say 3 months in a row because that's when it really starts to be a trend. Very large companies may be able to have seasonal ups and downs or annual ups and downs where they may go 12 or 18 or 30 months in a row of having negative profitability and negative cash flow. But because they're so big, because their resources are so strong, their borrowing power is so strong that they can survive, long-term downturns in the nature of their business. But small business owners can't do that. Typically, small business owners don't have more than 3 or 4 months of cash reserves or even credit reserves on hand. So when they hit 3 months in a row of negative profitability and negative cash flow, I encourage them to think about themselves in turnaround mode and to grab a hold of the situation as quickly as possible and do some things very dramatically, very quickly in order to turn the situation around. Typically, your cash reserves are low and your credit might be used up as well. And if you're able to look out into the future and see that crystal ball, you may consider yourself to be in turnaround mode when you see it coming. Even if you're only 1 month down or 2 months down, if you see that this is a trend or you see it over the horizon, that a trend is coming very quickly, then you may declare yourself to be in turnaround mode even before you hit the negative profitability and the negative cash flow for a few months. One of the questions I frequently get asked is, am I a startup or am I in turnaround mode? By my definition, and this is my definition because other people define startups differently, I say that you're in a startup mode in business until you have reached financial stability, until you have had positive income and positive cash flow for 3 months in a row. That's the threshold at which I believe that you move from startup mode either into rapid expansion mode or into comfortable growth mode. But by my definition, if you haven't reached financial stability, then you can't be in turnaround mode. Companies that are starting up don't typically have a core business to fall back on. And as you'll see in a minute, falling back on your core business is one of the primary recovery strategies of turnaround mode. But the focus and attention on when you're in turnaround mode kind of needs to be the same. Startup folks are typically working their fannies off. They're very intense. They're not taking a lot of money out of the company. And that's the same type of focus that you need when you're in turnaround mode. One of the things that is really obvious to me about turnaround mode is that it happens to everyone. So if you find yourself to be in turnaround mode, please know that you are in very good company. General Motors, Hewlett-Packard, Apple, IBM, and many other very large companies have been in turnaround mode from time to time. Every year is a new year. I had a client of mine give me that adage just last week. Every year is a new year. Things are constantly changing. Stuff happens. You might make a mistake or a poor choice, You might gamble in some way or take a risk in your business that just doesn't pay off the way that you want it to pay off. And there can also be market and environment changes that cause you to jump from profitability into turnaround mode. Here's some of the stuff that might happen to you, and I hope it doesn't. One of the things that can cause you to go to turnaround mode is the key employees exit or partners, especially your essential sales and delivery people, which can put you into crisis mode pretty quickly. And unfortunately, especially your superstars. People jump ship. They go out and start their own business, or they look for a new opportunity for three primary reasons. Because they want to be creative, because they want to be in control, and because they want to have the opportunity at massive wealth. If you're not giving your superstars at your company the ability to be honored for their accomplishments, the ability to be creative, the ability to have some level of control over their particular domain, then you're at risk of those superstars losing your business. And when superstars lose a business, it can cause you some severe problems. I've seen some companies have their key suppliers who have not delivered or just simply vanished. I had one client that had a boatload of merchandise, and well, really it was a container load of merchandise on a big old boat, but the boat sank on the way from China to the United States, and when the boat sank, there went 90 days supply of inventory, and they had to start all over and order that again, and it caused them to go into turnaround mode very quickly because they simply didn't have the product to sell. That's part of an example of how stuff can happen to you or anybody. You can also have embezzlement, fraud, or sabotage. One of the things that we take a careful look at whenever a company has been profitable, but now they find themselves to be in turnaround mode or in a mode that they're just not nearly as profitable today as they thought that they should be, or nearly as profitable as they were in the last several months. A key thing to check is to see whether or not somebody has been embezzling money from your business. And it does happen to about, I would say, 1 out of 20 businesses or so. Sometimes it's because they just don't have the financial controls in place and they don't have the checks and balances in place to forestall that. But that's one example of how stuff can happen, how you wake up one day and find out that your best friend who used to be who was the CFO of your business has been embezzling for the last 5 or 6 years and has taken $500,000 out of the business. That may seem to be an outrageous example, but that actually happened to a colleague of mine. They woke up one day to find that that has exactly happened. And that was the kind of stuff that put them into turnaround mode. And of course, you can always have acts of God. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. But sometimes there's stuff that happens that's way out of your control. Didn't have anything to do with a poor choice, a risk that didn't pay off, a bad decision that you made. It just was something that happened to you. But there are some things that happen to you that I think perhaps might have been avoided. So you might find yourself, when you reflect on the source of your problems, you might find yourself as having made a mistake or made a poor choice. You might have become overconfident and complacent. You might have taken your eye off the ball and stopped working as hard. That happens a lot to startup folks. They've worked their fannies off for years, and finally they've reached a point of profitability, and then maybe they're starting to be comfortable. So now they're starting to settle down, and maybe they're taking those weeks of vacation that they had wanted to take all along, but they weren't able to take in the first 5 years of their business. And they start, they start delegating a lot of responsibilities to other people, which, by the way, is a very good idea, but you can't abdicate responsibility. Delegate, don't abdicate. Abdicate is when you take your eye off the ball in addition to not working as hard. One of the big challenges that I see is when people think that the problem is going to self-correct. If they're in a business and an industry where they have a couple of good months and then not so good months, and then 3 or 4 good months and then 1 or 2 months that aren't so good, and they find themselves going up and down in terms of revenues and profits, you get 2 or 3 months into one of those downswings, and the natural assumption is that it's going to self-correct, that things are going to turn around, that it's just, a matter of luck, a matter of the draw that you got at this particular one, and your luck will turn around. Well, that's why I define turnaround mode as 3 successive months of poor profitability or no profitability and poor cash flow. I think the alarm bells should start ringing like crazy when you hit that third month. You say, wait a minute, maybe this situation won't self-correct. Maybe there's something going on here that I should really know about and focus on, and begin to make plans and take actions to not think about it self-correcting, but for you to correct the situation that's out there. Some companies find themselves with no focus on constant improvement. Things are rocking and rolling. They have a dominant position in a marketplace, and they continue to have that dominant position, and then all of a sudden one day they wake up and it's been 6 months since they had a profitable month, or 9 months since they've had a profitable month. And because they had no focus on constant improvement, they find that now they're in a competitive disadvantage where they weren't in, say, the first 4 or 5 years of their business life. And as we mentioned earlier, you might also have poor financial controls. And I consider that to be a mistake because I'm a big fan of checks and balances. Some of you know that I'm also a part-time CFO for some of the companies that I work with and for. I really enjoy that role. And one of the primary responsibilities of the CFO is to make sure that you have financial controls in place. I did an office hours presentation on financial controls some time ago. I'm not sure which number it was, but if you think that you don't have any financial controls in place, I encourage you to look up that office hours presentation and listen to it, because it may be the thing that really saves your business in the long term. And finally, one of the things that I think is a poor choice is not knowing the source of your profits. And again, just like companies that think that their situation is going to self-correct, there's a lot of companies that have a big book of business and they have hundreds or thousands of clients, but they really don't understand which ones of those clients are contributing most to their profits. I'll talk about that a little bit more when we talk about what can you do when you find yourself in turnaround mode. Another reason companies find themselves in turnaround mode is they may have taken a risk that didn't pay off. They gambled on a new product line, but the marketplace didn't really want it, or they were not able to deliver it at the price point that the marketplace wanted to pay, or the product or service just didn't deliver the results and deliver the value to the customers that the customers wanted. They may have also had a marketing campaign failure. You know, small businesses, as I often say, you can only afford so many $5,000 or $10,000 mistakes before it really starts to eat into the success likelihood of your business. So if you're a very small company, you may have only 1 or 2 products that you're working on at once, and maybe only 1 or 2 marketing campaigns that you're working on at once. And if you have a turn of bad luck and those risks don't pay off for you, then you can find yourself in turnaround mode. You can also have other expansion failures. I've seen companies that wanted to open up a second location or a third location and just not work out for them. Or companies that wanted to acquire another company and for some reason the acquisition didn't really turn out. Whether the acquisition actually happened or not, it's a risk that caused you to take your eye off the ball and maybe divert time and other resources to an expansion opportunity that just didn't pay off for you. You might also experience market and environment changes, recessions. Lord knows we all just came through a tremendous recession, and there are those of us who firmly believe that there are segments of our industries and marketplaces that are still very much in a recession. I know that a lot of it has recovered, but there are still some areas of it, I think, that are still very much in recession. Terrorist attacks are out of our control that can really cause you to have some issues. Technology shifts. Usually you can see these coming, but sometimes not. The buggy whip manufacturers in the 1900s never believed that the automobile was going to take the place of the buggy. They never developed alternative product lines. They didn't see themselves as in the transportation accessory market. They thought of themselves as being in the buggy whip market. And when technology shifted around them, they didn't respond typically near quick enough to salvage the business. Government policies can also shift the competitive environment in which you're working and cause you some really nasty problems and put you into turnaround mode very quickly as well. And then the competition, of course. The competition can come up, by surprise very quickly these days. And that's why you have to be ever diligent and focused and keep your eye on the ball to make sure that you're leading the market, or at least in the in the forefront of the marketplace, so some competitor will not have near the opportunity to come around and steal significant market share from you with some sort of innovation. And the last one we've talked about just a little bit earlier, acts of God. Tsunamis, hurricanes, tornadoes, earthquakes, volcanoes. There's all kinds of acts of God. Droughts that may come along that may just have nothing to do with you or the choices that you made, but they can put you into a turnaround mode very, very quickly. And here's hoping that none of those have happened to you or ever do happen to you. But many of you that are listening to this may still be suffering from the impact of recessions and technology shifts because technology changes very quickly, and the recession of 2008, 2009 took a lot of wind out of the sails about a lot of the businesses that I've had a chance to work with. If you find yourself to be in turnaround mode, here are some things that are really going to help you out. First of all, think of yourself as a turnaround manager and focus your efforts on first getting control of the cash. You have to get control of the cash because you got to make payroll, and you have to pay your critical suppliers, and you have to pay your critical contractors. So get control of the cash as quickly as possible. Eliminate the excesses in your business as quickly as possible. Focus on your core competencies and do everything you can to preserve your assets. Preserving your assets is your physical property and your intellectual property. When companies find themselves in turnaround mode, they may find that it was poor financial controls or poor physical asset controls that caused them to get there. So focus on your inventory, focus on your physical assets, and focus on your intellectual property to make sure that you're preserving that while you're in turnaround mode and taking some dramatic steps that typically companies have to take. Speaking of those, here's what to do, and we'll cover these in various categories. First, embracing an effective mindset, cutting your costs, negotiating debt, recapitalizing the business, and there's a lot of options for that, focusing on the core business, and most importantly, taking quick and massive action. Let's jump through these one at a time. First, and I think most important, is embrace an effective mindset. You're in turnaround mode, but you can't really focus on being in disaster mode. If you cry over spilled milk, getting yourself into that shadow energy of woe is me, of that I'm a victim or I'm a prisoner, does not serve you well. Being accurate and facing the facts serves you well, but I want you, as quickly as possible, get back to that point to where you have no regrets and no resentments. I know it's a stretch, especially for you that find yourself in turnaround mode right now, but it's a very healthy attitude to say, you know, that happened, it was behind us, it was yesterday, there's nothing I can do about it except recover from it and take steps to prevent it from happening again if it was a matter of a mistake or a choice that you made or a risk that didn't pay off. If it was an act of God or a recession or something else, then, you know, you just got to get over it. You got to suck it up and you got to face the facts and go for it. It's an opportunity for you to be creative about your business. It's an opportunity for you to be courageous and tough. Courageous within yourself and tough in the actions that you take, but it's also an opportunity for you to be fair, to be honest, to be sensitive to the needs and wants of other people, and to be optimistic. It's an opportunity for you to shift your energy every single day. If you wake up and you're depressed and disgruntled and, you know, in a grumpy mood, it's an opportunity for you to shift that, to let it go. Sometimes you got to let it out to let it go, but let it go and move into an optimistic and energized mindset just as quickly as you possibly can, because it's from that mindset that I believe that the turnaround is most likely to come. If you stay in the dumps, if you stay in your victim or your prisoner energy, I don't think you're nearly as likely to have a successful turnaround than if you jump into a more opportunistic mindset. One of the first things that you want to do is take 100% responsibility for the situation. That doesn't mean that you're saying that you caused it, but you are taking 100% responsibility for fixing it, for dealing with it, for handling it. The very first office hours presentation I did, 16, 18 months ago, was on taking 100% responsibility. I think that that's the most important business success principle at all in business. And the very first business success principle in the key performance area of leadership in some of my training programs. So take 100% responsibility and embrace an effective recovery mindset, and then face the facts. One of the adages in the book Good to Great, one of their key business success principle, is to confront the brutal facts but never lose faith, and that's what I'm saying to you. Confront the facts honestly and objectively. Don't have any sacred cow. And by the way, the analogy of the sacred cow comes from the starving people who had one cow left, but they refused to harvest the cow and butcher the cow and feed their people because it was a sacred cow. Make sure that you don't have any sacred cows in your business, that everything is up for inspection, and everything except your ethics and except your character is up for review. I encourage you to solicit input internally and externally. Input from all of your employees and your contractors, externally from business advisors, from your customers who may have some really good ideas about what you can do to turn the business around. Face the facts and make sure that you see all of those perspectives that are available for you, and analyze your financial performance. A lot of times folks find themselves in recovery mode, in turnaround mode, because they haven't analyzed their financial performance, and they haven't taken a good look at their costing and their pricing and their cash flow and their profitability. One thing I know for sure when it comes to facing the facts is it's going to hurt, because you're going to discover things that you didn't discover before, and things you go, oh my God, I should have seen that months ago, or how could I have ever made that decision? How could I have trusted that person? Why didn't I have a backup plan? And you're going to come through a lot of stuff here. So I recognize it's going to hurt. My encouragement to you, again, is to let it out, to share it with somebody, and then let it go, because having regrets and resentments is not going to contribute very well to the turnaround of your business. It's most likely that you're going to have to cut costs in some way. It's typical that companies immediately cut training programs and travel programs, perks to employees. They may also find themselves as cutting salaries and wages and any sort of bonus programs they might have. They may find themselves eliminating vacations and requiring overtime and extra effort, which is a way of cutting costs, because you're maybe cutting headcount and cutting back some of the subcontractors that you or outsourced resources that you have used in the past. And you may have to eventually cut the staff as well. I know it's been my unfortunate experience to be in that mode when the edict came down from on high that we're going to have a 10% headcount reduction in every area of the business. And yes, Paul, you have to cut somebody that's on your IT staff. And I had a whole bunch of B+ and A players, and it really broke my heart to let one guy know that I had to let him go. But that was the choice that was made by people up above me, and I fought for them, but you know, it didn't work. I had to go ahead and let somebody go. And you may find yourself in a position of having to let somebody go as well, even though that you don't want to do it and they don't particularly deserve it. But to save the business, sometimes you got to cut costs, and cut costs dramatically. It's easiest if you find ineffective marketing programs that you can cut, or product development programs that are going very slowly that you may be able to put them on hold or just terminate them in some way and save a lot of cash that way. You may have to shut back some facilities or cut back on some locations. That happens rather frequently. We take a look at where our business is really coming from, where we're making our money, and if you have a marginally profitable or completely unprofitable location or facility, you may have to cut that back. You may have to cut back your use of a warehouse and sublet part of that warehouse to a friend or another business colleague that you have. But there's a lot of ways to cut costs. There's a lot of ways to turn off the lights. I was working at a company once, and you know, the COO of the company made the point that I've always remembered. He said, man, when this business turns around, or when this business turns sour, you'll be surprised at how quickly I can turn the lights off. And I was, and he did very, very quickly turn the lights off. In his particular case, it was, you know, cutting the third shift back to half the number of employees, reducing the head count by 10 or 15%, cutting back on training programs and education programs. He cut very quick, and he cut very deep, and he did a really good job of turning the company around. Another opportunity you might have to turn your company around is negotiate and restructure your debt. You can have credit card debt, IRS debt, and supplier debt, or personal and private debt. But usually you will have the opportunity to go in and in some way and convert and restructure some of that debt. You can go to the bank and restructure an installment loan program or a line of credit program into some other different financial instrument that will allow you to make payments on it and keep your credit score up as high as you can possibly do it while you're honoring the debts that you have. When you're in turnaround mode, debt service can be one of the most difficult things to maintain, and it can be a big problem when it comes to growing the business. You need the cash in the business now in order to grow the business, much like you needed the cash in the business when you were starting up the business to grow the business. So you might have an opportunity to say, how about we just accrue interest for 6 months and then take the interest that has been accrued and add that to the principal of the loan and restructure the debt in that way. That's just one of the many examples that you have about your opportunity to negotiate and restructure your debt. Or somebody might take a settlement. Somebody might say, I know I owe you $10,000 and I'm supposed to be paying it in the next 90 days. How about if I pay you $5,000 today? So you delay your payments to some vendors or suppliers, and you accelerate payments through resettling the debt or restructuring and renegotiating the debt with other suppliers. You may find yourself in an opportunity to actually recapitalize as well. You may be able to get a line of credit or restructure a line of credit where you hadn't had one before. You may be able to have a floor planning or a consignment inventory relationship with your sources that you didn't have before. So, for example, if you were used to buying $10,000 worth of merchandise at a 50% of retail discount, you may be able to get consignment inventory for a slightly less discount so that you don't have to invest your cash in the inventory, and you can pull your cash that you had invested in inventory back into the business and spend it in other ways. You may be able to do asset-based lending. If you own buildings and land, if you own cars, if you own inventory, anything that has a collateral value, there are people out there that will loan you money based upon your assets as long as that asset has a real collateral value to it. Sometimes banks can do that, but also private money lenders can do that as well. You may be able to factor your purchase orders and receivables. If you deal with Class A companies or AAA companies, you may be able to get money in advance whenever you land a purchase order from one of those companies, or you may be able to sell your accounts receivable. That's not quite the same as getting a line of credit. A line of credit will typically attach your receivables and your inventory to it, but in this case I'm talking about actually selling your receivables to a third party for 80 cents or 85 cents on the dollar. You may also be able to sell equity in your business to a friend, a colleague, a partner of some kind, to sell a portion of your business to get that capital, that turnaround capital back into your business, and you may be able to bring on a partner too. So bringing on the partner, I've seen this look like, we need the cash to grow our business. I also need some strength to grow my business, so I'm going to bring in a partner who's going to come in and join the business in an operational role. They're going to bring in $100,000 of their own cash. They're going to take an equity position at the company, and I have in some way recapitalized the business because of bringing on a partner. So there's a lot of things. If you have the asset value, if you've got assets like customers and receivables and you have been profitable before, you have a lot of opportunities to turn around your financial situation that people who have never been profitable will never have. Another thing you want to make sure that you do here is focus on the core business. And it's not just the core business, but it's the core profitable business. And this means you really need to understand where your profitable business is coming from. And not every company really does. And you can apply the 80-20 rule a lot. The 80-20 rule in this particular circumstance means that 80% of your profits are coming from 20% of your customer base. The general 80-20 rule is that 80% of your revenue is coming from 20% of your customer base, but this is a different 80-20 rule. It's 80% of your profits coming from 20% of your customer base, and it may not be the same 20% of your customer base that was giving you all those revenues. In fact, one of my consulting partners that I worked with for a number of years, Dave Mead at the Mead Consulting Group in Denver, Colorado, shared this information with me that I'm sharing with you now. In a study of over 1,500 businesses, what they found was that they could separate their customer base into 3 tiers. The Tier 1 business, which is typically 15 to 20% of your customers, which is very profitable. Tier 2, which was 60 to 70% of the business, which was marginally profitable or just barely break even. And Tier 3, where the loss was coming in, 10 to 25% of your customers were taking a tremendous amount of the loss. So the way that you read this whale chart, as he called it, is that if you only had the Tier 1 business, you might be making $800,000 or $900,000 in profit. If you only had Tier 1 or Tier 2, you might have the same $800,000 or $900,000 in profit. But because you have those Tier 3 customers, those customers that are sucking the life out of your business and sucking the profitability and the cash out of your business, you may only end up with a couple of $300,000 in profit. So the Tier 1 businesses may be contributing 300% of your profit, but 200% of that is taken away by the Tier 3 customers that you have. It's very important for you to do this kind of financial analysis so that you can find out exactly where your core profitability is so that you have an opportunity to take these Tier 3 customers and get rid of them or turn them at least into Tier 2 customers so that you can take these Tier 2 customers and turn them into Tier 1 customers, and so that you can focus a lot of your time and attention on those Tier 1 customers so you can strengthen the relationship and grow the lifetime value of those customers and to make sure that they don't leave you. And that's what I mean by focusing on your core business. When you focus on your core business, you may also need to reduce your offerings once you find out where your profits are really coming from. You may want to simplify the business. You may want to sharpen your brand and look for the low-hanging fruit again in the same way that you look for the low-hanging fruit whenever you started your business in the first place. And again, a key to doing that is return to a startup mentality. In a startup mentality, we are aggressively pursuing financial stability just as quickly as we possibly can get there. And that's what's going to turn it around whenever you're focused on the core business and whenever you turn around your business. Whenever you do that, I encourage you to take quick and massive action, have strategic planning sessions with key people both inside and outside your business just as quickly as possible. If you have to cut deep, cut quick. I like to say only cut once. Cut deep, cut quick, cut once, because get people into the point of saying that that's over with, that we had one. What you don't want to do is have multiple rounds of layoffs. That can really damage morale and teamwork. Better to have one dramatic round of layoffs than to have multiple rounds of layoffs, because that will hurt your business in the long term, and you'll find your A employees about the second round of layoffs, where they might have stayed with you if you had cut deep and once, will find their way out the door. And do everything that you can to keep your essential teammates and your most profitable customers on board when you take that quick and massive action, and think outside the box. As we said, it's a new year. Think about being the new you. Think about this in a very positive, optimistic way. It's your opportunity to remake the business and to restructure the business and to get it going again and rebuild it again with the same kind of enthusiasm that you had when you started the business or bought the business in the first place. When you take quick and massive action, just a quick reminder that having great plans are great, but execution is the key. You have to make the tough choices and do the work day after day after day. It's your strong and committed leadership that is the most essential factor when it comes to turning your business around. So here's the bottom line. Don't deny it when it's time for you to turn your business around. Don't expect the business to self-correct. Take 100% responsibility and take the massive action that you need to turn it around. Look at the causes and understand them, and be aggressive and smart when developing and executing your turnaround plan, and be as relentless when you are implementing your turnaround plan as you were when you started the business in the very first place. That was our agenda for today. We talked about when do you need to turn around your business. We talked about the causes of collapse. some which might be your, quote, fault and some that are not, what to do, and we found some that all up in the bottom line. So here's your homework and your exercise. Determine if you're in a turnaround situation. Determine if anyone you know might be in a turnaround situation and might find value in this program. That's why we share them, and I encourage you to share them. So even if you're not in turnaround mode, you may know somebody who is, and they might find great value in this program. And as always, get coaching and support that you need to accelerate your growth and progress and to help turn it around. We're going to have open questions and answers here in just a minute. We're going to have comments and questions on the topic of the day and then any other issues. When you tell me what your biggest takeaways are and the insights that you got from this presentation, tell me what you're going to focus on. As you know, my distinctions are that I focus on the whole person. I really want you to get the support that you want, that you need, that you can use, and that you can afford to take those critical next steps in your business. I want you to learn to swim before you jump into the deep end, and if you're already in the deep end, but I want you to get the training and the education and the coaching that you need in order to stop thrashing about and swim comfortably in the water. I think that belief and persistence are necessary, but I don't think that they're sufficient. I've seen too many people bang their head against the wall just thinking that it was their hard work alone that was going to enable them to be successful in business. But I think that you need a viable business model and a lot of support. And that's why we offer education, training, consulting, and coaching services and our growth management services. In some cases, we teach you the things that you can do so you can do it for yourself. In some cases, we do it with you. In other cases, we will do it for you. But our preferred method is the do-it-with-you model. We have a business growth acceleration kit that you can take advantage of at paulhoyt.com/CEO bonus, where you can get a program called The 5 Choices of Winning CEOs, an article on the 10 things you should know about raising capital if you're thinking about doing that, some samples of my inspirational works, and a free consulting session with myself or one of our senior business consultants to talk about where you are in your business and what might be some good next steps for you, and always some surprise bonus. We announced a new program last week called the Awakened CEO. For those who are on a journey of personal and spiritual growth, it's one-on-one training with me in the practice of awakening, in shifting your energy and learning life lessons and becoming a kinder, wiser, stronger person. Call me personally for more information if you're interested in the Awakened CEO program. Our next office hours will be next week on January 26th. I haven't decided on the topic yet, so if you've got a suggestion for me, go to paulsurvey.com and fill out the survey, and who knows, maybe I'll do a 45-minute or an hour-long presentation on something that will really help you move your business forward. And in the meantime, do your homework. So now we're going to open it up to questions and answers and coaching. First of all, comments and questions on the subject of the day, and then any other questions and insights that you might have. Go to the Brilliant Business Group on Facebook or LinkedIn and type in your comments and questions, and that way you get support from not just me and my team, but from members of the entire community out there. And with that, Stephanie, that was a longer presentation than I thought that it was going to be, but I'm going to open it up to questions. Do we have any?
Fantastic presentation. Yes, we do have some questions. Are you ready? First one. Can you give another example about a company who thought their profits were coming from one place only to discover they were coming from another?
I certainly can. I had the opportunity to work with Dave Mead, the gentleman I mentioned earlier, on a company in Denver, Colorado, that thought that most of their profits were coming from their very large customers. But when we analyzed the profitability of it, we decided to take the analysis beyond just the profitability of the products and services that the customer was consuming. So when we took a look at the individual products that that customer was buying, it looked like that customer was a profitable customer. But then we got to realize that we have an entire salesperson, one entire salesperson, making a significant amount of compensation every year, was focused on that one account. And this one account was issuing 4 or 5 purchase orders a day. So we had, half or 1/3 of an office worker that was focused on that account. And these purchase orders were very, very small. So we were constantly picking very small orders, maybe 2 or 3 or 4 times a day, picking these small orders and getting them right out to them, and that we had negotiated that we would send them via courier. So what turned out was that all the profitability that we thought that we were making, because each individual product that we were selling looked profitable, was all eaten up and totally destroyed by all of the perks that were in the relationship. We were spending, $200,000, $250,000 a year on this one customer, and it was eating up all of the profits. So what did we do? One of the things that we installed right away was to say that you only get one delivery a day, and we can no longer afford to get that to you via courier. If you order things throughout the day, then we will have them ready for your pickup at 5 o'clock at night. And oh, by the way, the minimum purchase order quantity or dollar amount is $50, because it costs us $10 or $15 to process every order that you put in here, and we're just kind of breaking even on a $50 order. So, whenever you issue a purchase order to us and say that you want a particular part, then please know that you're going to have to order at least $50 of merchandise at a time. Now, $100 might be more appropriate, but $50 of merchandise at one time, and we'll have those purchase orders available to you at the end of the day. So the customer, by the way, changed their habits. Instead of calling 4 or 5 times a day and requesting that somebody immediately deliver that product to them right away, they would call once a day, along about noon or 1 o'clock, and say, here are the 4 or 5 things that we want to order for the day, and we'd have them available for them at the end of the day. And as a result of that, also, we took the salesperson and made them have a slightly larger territory and a slightly larger quota than just this one client, and we're able to turn that client around to where what we thought was the most profitable customer ended up being a profitable customer, because we recognized that they were consuming costs and consuming cash out of the company in ways that we had never predicted before. So that's one example of a way that we found and turned around a particular customer which we thought was making money but wasn't making money, and then we were able to turn around and make money. And by the way, that's a classic example of some of the things that you can do at your company to increase your profitability. Take a look at not only the individual orders that come through and the profitability of the individual orders, but to take a look at all of the general and administrative expenses that you have and how they're being allocated back to specific customers, locations, products, and product lines, so that you get a total loaded cost of your products. And it's something much different than the gross margin, but if you get a loaded cost of your product and a loaded cost of servicing a customer, oftentimes you'll find out that your most profitable, who you thought were your most profitable customers were, really didn't turn out to be that way, and you have the opportunity to turn them around. That, by the way, is a fairly extensive consulting engagement to do that kind of analysis so that you can allocate your general and administrative expenses back to customers, locations, products, and product lines. It's typically not something that you do in a turnaround mode, but something that you do if you sense that your profits are starting to eke away a little bit, or do you just want to be proactive and be as profitable as you can possibly be. That kind of consulting engagement can really help you with that. Hope that was helpful. Next question, Stephanie.
Okay. Have you ever been in turnaround mode yourself?
Absolutely. Like nearly everyone that I know, we found ourselves in turnaround mode in 2008 and 2009. Whenever the recession hit and people just stopped starting businesses and they stopped spending money on consulting. I listed some of the things that people do to cut costs as training and perks and all that. One of the things they oftentimes do to cut costs is to cut their use of business advisors and outside consultants as well, because they want to keep their own employees. And by the way, that can be a very smart thing to do. But for those of us who are consultants and business advisors and who have education, consulting, and training programs that we have out there, it can really cause us a challenge in the business. So yeah, I saw in 2008 and 2009, my business was cut in half, and it's been slow building back up since that time. So we've certainly gotten back to the point of profitability, but we've also haven't enjoyed the revenues yet that we enjoyed in 2007, because like like so many people in the marketplace, my business is still trying to recover from the recession. So yeah, I've seen it myself and had to make some of those tough choices myself too. Next question, Stephanie.
Okay. I'm in turnaround mode now. What specifically can you do to help me?
Well, first of all, you have my sympathies. It's because when you find yourself in turnaround mode, that can be tough to deal with. Like I've talked about several times, sometimes you gotta just let it out and then let it go, and focus on the greatness that you have within. Focus on the things that are going extremely well. Find yourself that foundation to build on, and you can do that just by searching, within yourself and at your company. But like every customer that I have, I generally don't prescribe until I do a much further diagnosis. So it really depends on where you are. For example, if you have $500,000 in revenue, you're just not profitable, and you've only been unprofitable for 6 months or 9 months, you may have a tremendous opportunity to just do some cuts and refocus your efforts and snap yourself around in a matter of a month or two. Maybe it's just a marketing program because you haven't done marketing programs before. Maybe it's really taking a tough look at your staff and saying, I've always thought that these 2 or 3 people that I have on my team were not carrying your weight, and now's my opportunity to restructure my organization and frankly get rid of some of the dead weight, get rid of some of the dead wood and prune the trees, so to speak. Sometimes you have to prove the vines. In fact, I think one of my, if you remember the guy I talked to earlier who said you'd be surprised at how quickly I can turn the lights off at the company, and I was surprised. He thought it was very healthy for a company to every 4 or 5 years or so go through a 10% to a 15% reduction in their workforce. Some companies, by the way, do that as a routine matter, which I think is not a good idea. But every once in a while, it is important for you to do that. So the correct action depends on where you are, how big of a company you are, how long you've been profitable, how you're making your money today. If you really know who your most profitable customers are, if the cause of your turnaround has been external, like an act of God or a terrorist attack or something like that, then the recovery may be as simple as cutting your costs and allowing your natural growth to catch up with the overhead that you had, or it may be more difficult from that. The bottom line is that before I would prescribe anything, I'd want to know more about your specific situation so that we could recommend a course of action that was exactly what you needed, exactly what you could actually use right now and employ right now, and something that you could afford to. That's my promise to everybody is before I say generically, you got to do this, I really want to know where you are, where you're going, how quickly you want to get there, what the resources you have at your disposal, so I can make a diagnosis and make recommendations that are specific to your particular business situation and can help you make sure that those next steps are the right steps for you. Next question, Stephanie.
Okay. I'm in turnaround mode now. Oh, I'm sorry. Just the next one. What if I can't turn it around? What do I do?
And unfortunately, that's the case. I'm going to let this be the last question of the day, too, because we're getting close to the top of the hour. Unfortunately, that happens sometimes, that you can't turn it around, that the disaster was so great that you just can't recover from it. I knew lots of travel agencies, for example, that went bankrupt after the 9/11 disaster because airfare was cut, right? If you remember those days. In those days that the federal government, decided that we're not going to allow any planes to fly for some period of time, and we're going to make air travel very uncomfortable, and it turned out to be reasonably expensive, and airlines suffered greatly, but they were able to recover because they were so big, but the independent little travel agencies couldn't recover at all. Especially if they had a travel-related business of any kind, tour guides and tourist attractions in cities, just went under because of a downturn in the marketplace and something that was totally out of their control. So sometimes it does happen to where you try 3 or 4 different marketing programs in a row and none of them work, or you bring 3 or 4 different products to market in a row and none of them work, and you invested all of your marketing dollars and all of your product development dollars, in efforts that never paid off for you, so you're never able to stem the tide of the profits eking out at your company. Sometimes it just happens to where you're not able to recover. So if you're not able to recover, then you can talk to, you're welcome to have a conversation with us, but there's other people that you may want to talk to as well about whether you sell the business and salvage the assets, or whether you declare Chapter 11 bankruptcy or Chapter 7 bankruptcy, which is whether you decide to continue or whether you decide to just close the doors and shutter the business and move on. Or you can sell the business in some way. Sometimes you can go to a competitor and say, listen, I'm ready to get out, I'm ready to sell. What will you give me for the company? Or do a merger, or allow yourself to be acquired in a way that keeps income coming in your door, but removes from you the responsibility of trying to turn it around when it just can't be turned around. So I hope that never happens to you. But if it does happen to you, I encourage you to, as quickly as possible, to shift your energy and get back to that place where you have no regrets and no resentments, and you have some optimism and sense of purpose about what you're going to do next with your business after you have turned it around, one way or the other. And I'll conclude here by saying that I recognize that when you find yourself in turnaround mode, that it can be a very tough place to be. We will be here for you at our company to do everything we can to help make sure that your next steps are the right steps, whether you be in startup mode, whether you be in startup mode, moderate growth mode, comfortable growth mode, rapid expansion mode, or turnaround mode. We'll be here to make sure that your next steps are the right steps. And until we talk again, this is Paul Hoyt wishing you a most marvelous and prosperous day. Bye-bye.